Good evening, I am Rob from the Black Mountains, and it's good to be here. And we are going to have a discussion. We've got some panelists behind me, land, politics, food, and culture. But more importantly, we've got you guys as well. There's a roving microphone. We're going to make this interactive. I live up in the Black Mountains of South Wales, and earlier on this week, I was at a place called the Hay Festival. And the Hay Festival is a place where people talk about different things. They bring different writers, different points of view. And unfortunately, it has been defunded because some activists didn't like the sponsor of the event. So this is where I want to celebrate Home Tree. The fact that it is a great place to have some of these conversations. And I understand that this time last year, there was a panel discussion that was the seed for the conference yesterday. And I think that's got to be celebrated for that diversity of views being hosted by Home Tree. So I think that's great stuff to start with. Talking of diversity, I was at one of the talks about woodlands, the woodlands of Donegal, and it said to spot an ancient woodland, you look for diversity. Where I live in the Black Mountains, there's lots of diversity, but it's mainly the 200-year-old oak and beech and ash trees growing out of old farmsteads. And so for me, that reflects the transition, the movement of what countryside is. And Ray said to me, I want this discussion, which was supposed to start 30 minutes ago, and I was once asked to speak to some farmers, and they said, Rob, you start talking, we're going to start eating. So I'm not going to let this overrun because I get very hungry, and you guys are going to get hungry. But you're also going to earn your food by being part of the discussion, okay? So we're going to just make it interactive. We've got the roving mic. Kia's got it somewhere over there. Well, you're there, but you're going to be moving around. But the basic premise that Ray said to me was rural futures. But that's a big subject. So I'm going to narrow it down and talk about, just use one word, coexistence, and then I'm going to say the culture of this area is land, grafted communities starting to walk with other communities moving into the area. So how do we walk the walk with other communities who are coming in to this land-based community? And so I'm going to ask the panel to give 30 seconds, just 30 seconds each as to whatever they just maybe introduce themselves. That would be a good start, just kind of 30 seconds. And anything they want to unpack around that starter, and then we'll just see where it kind of flows from there.
That's a super easy one for me because I'm a blow-in from Cork. I think what makes West Clare special is actually not the people who came here or not the people who are from here, but the alchemy between the two. I really believe that.
Great, thanks.
I think it's important for people to realise that Ennistimon was the biggest market town in Munster. So we've had an alchemy between people, transient people here for many decades. It's not just a new thing since COVID with the Instagram invasion. And we started the Steiner School here 17 years ago, the only free one in Ireland, which also led to about 70 families moving here that had computer, IT, yoga, and all kinds of diverse skills as well, which is also really important. I suppose the key thing is, though, that if you are a blow-in, it's probably up to you to make an effort with the locals more so than the locals make an effort with you. Because we are Catholic, oppressed, fucked up nation. We're quite shy about that.
No, okay.
Not me.
I almost want to have an interjection and see if there's anyone in the audience who wants to say, should it be should it be more the blow-in making an effort to go to the pub, or is there as much emphasis on people already in the pub to integrate with the people coming through the door? We'll leave that part then, please.
So the question is, how do we walk together? Is that?
Yeah, or how you
comes to mind?
interpret that, yeah.
Well, I'll start off with a hopeful message then. Having come back to Ireland only in the last few years after a long time away, I think the Irish people already do that for the most part, and I think that's been really evident the last few years with the Ukrainians coming in and the other migration. So I think a strength of the Irish, the island of Ireland is the people, the connectivity that's here already, the openness, the welcoming nature, and it brings a diversity of thinking, it brings a diversity that we need in everything. So I build off that, I suppose. I think it happens already, and I think hopefully the people who are coming have enough access to cultural knowledge to be able to integrate, but I see that happening already.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
It's happening already, but it's been happening for generations. Like this is nothing new that new people are moving to an area. Like my own parish, I'm in the Gaeltacht in West Kerry, and for example, when my daughter started in junior infants, 4 years of age, there was a grand total of 7, which by the way was the biggest junior infant class in our school since 1936. I'll just put that there. She was the only one who any of her grandparents went to the same school. People have been moving to rural Ireland since time began and integrating, mixing and bringing fresh ideas, bringing fresh things, and it's worked.
And is it still working? I mean, do you think the fresh ideas are falling on fertile ground? Does anyone in the audience want to add anything around that? Do you think there's any examples of, let's say, walking into a local pub and then engaging in conversation and then discovering there's more in common than you may have expected when you first walked into the pub? Or any other thoughts? Yes, please.
I suppose what I'm thinking is that more people equal less nature. So we might have impacted nature in a negative way by bringing more and more people to...
Yeah, so tourism, what you're saying, that the sudden increase in kind of tourism will have a negative impact, potentially.
Well, I moved into a really old cottage and I didn't really impact the ecosystem too much, but if I built a new house, I would have done. And more people move into an area definitely pushes nature away.
I just interject there with the new Croí Cónaithe fund, which means Heart of Living, which is a derelict and empty house fund. 70,000 if it's a derelict cottage, and 50,000 if it's an empty house for more than 2 years, has led to over 300 people in Clare turning empty houses and derelict houses into homes without starting a whole new footprint. So I think that's a really big win that myself and a few others brought to government and got funding for. So there is an option there for people who can't afford it. And Ashley, who's the chef here, who's done up a lovely old house, told me she couldn't have done it without the grant. So that's a really interesting one, and I suppose that's what we were thinking about, was to lower the footprint. When you come in to revive a lovely old building, which often has old houses and old gardens attached to it.
That's so refreshing to hear, because in Wales, if you live in a national park and you want to turn an old building into a residential, you've got to pay a huge premium to the national park. But I think that's regulation getting in the way.
Sorry.
Yeah, go. No, don't. Just jump in. Put your hand up, anyone. Just Joe.
There's a very valid point there, because there's a massive difference between moving to an area and becoming part of the community than going to an area and building a house. They're two different, completely different things. Like where I'm from, Dinnseanchas, there are more houses than people. For the simple reason that people saw that the place was beautiful. So what will we do? We'll build a house, we'll build a summer house, we'll build a second house, or a third house in some cases. And you scar the landscape, and you're not adding to the community in any way, shape or form by doing that. But with Croí Cónaithe, I've seen it myself in West Kerry, you're reinvigorating places because you're actually living there. There's a difference between building a house and actually living in the house.
Is it more expensive to move into rural areas?
Well, it's...
I think
for ourselves.
Well,
sorry.
also I meant also environmentally, because where I live up in the mountains, I'm always going to be on a kind of septic tank. I'm almost going to have to rely on oil because I'm so far from any infrastructure. Is it harder to move into... No, go, yeah.
You've probably noticed the rural settlement pattern in Ireland. I remember cycling around Dartmoor in Devon. And it's like nothing, farmhouse. Nothing, farmhouse. That's not the way rural Ireland is. I think it's rural poverty is a reality in Ireland in a way that it's not, maybe in Wales, but not in England so much. You know, affluence gets you into the countryside. It's a bit different here.
Sure.
Well, I know that we're putting the solar panels going up on 100 houses every single day in Ireland at the moment. We're having a solar revolution. At the moment, we're producing 1 gigawatt of power owned by the people, which is a fifth of our demand, which is massive. So we brought in legislation to get rid of the need for planning permission for solar panels. Up to then, you had to spend £1,000 or £2 hiring somebody to get planning. So we got rid of that. The first week I became a senator, that was my first law I brought in ever. And then we got rid of the VAT on solar panels and have a grant of €2,100. So we now have over-employment in just putting up solar panels. And I was saying to somebody earlier on, the feeling you get when you own your own energy and you're not giving your money to some motherfucker.
Okay. Oh yeah, the motherfucker, own your own energy. Yes, put solar panels and own it.
That's a good one for you, Dáithí. Could you say a little bit about the West Kerry Energy Project? Was there not a big kind of energy independence movement out in...
Obviously, from the earlier conversation, West Kerry is quite windy. You know, and there was a project. Actually, the final report was published this week. Sustainability Dingle, and it's just that giving people energy independence. Like we all have, many of us have buildings. Many of us can put up solar panels, and there is a company, an indigenous little company that started off as a plumbing company, which is now one of the biggest solar panel installers in the country because of that project.
Okay.
If you build it, they will come. If you build it and show that it's working and saving you money, then the possibilities are endless.
Sure. Okay. No, there's a question.
So just to speak to the idea of housing in the Cruinna Creagh, obviously, which has been great success coming from Wales. I'm sure you're familiar with the One Planet scheme there. So I think that takes it to another level where actually, the closed loop cycles dealing with waste, energy, living lightly on the land, carbon neutrality, natural building, that's the model that needs to be championed if we're really to see a fruitful transition and modelling a future which will benefit, nature and the rest of us.
Yeah, the only thing I've got to say, so I've just got to respond to that, and I'm supposed to be the moderator, so I'm putting it to the floor, but I've got to respond to that. It's a perfect solution, but the regulations they put in front of it means that they've only had one whole planet application get through the hoops in 10 years.
Rob, that's a perfect way to jump in. Agroforestry is an area of interest to me. It's culturally acceptable to farmers. It's trees and farming. We've got a scheme. It's been out for 6 years. How many applicants? Sorry, it's actually gone up to about 70 or 80, but it's really underperforming. There's another scheme got to do with emergent woodland, really underperforming because of regulation.
Yeah, because of the regs.
We have quadrupled our number of organic farmers in Ireland, so I think it's just people don't understand agroforestry. Just it's quite a new concept in this country.
We didn't get a chance to introduce ourselves, but Róisín is a politician.
Sorry, can I just say...
She did. I did say that's a politician, not there.
I've been an environmental activist for about 30 years. I'm a politician for about 40 years. I'm still an activist.
Okay, hold that front. We've got a question. Okay, hold. We've got a comment from the back here, yes, please.
Yeah, so I'll try not to take up too much time, but just to give a bit of background, I grew up in the countryside down in Cork, another Cork man here, and I've seen how things have changed in just even like the road where I grew up. There's been 40 houses built right next door to where I grew up, and then so I suppose it's like developers have been taking advantage of rural Ireland for way too long, and that's the negative. But I suppose the positive, I have a friend who's moved into derelict cottage and is renovating that, and he's like, he comes to Home Tree a lot, and he's got very different ideas, and it's interesting to see his interaction with the local farmer. they want two very different things. The local farmer is very, very much about status and how other people perceive him. And Louis, my friend, he's very much, he wants nature to flourish and grow. And I suppose those are kind of two very different things. And it's like there's struggles there that, like, there's cultural clashes and there's new things coming in. And it's really, I suppose the question is how do you actually integrate that and get people talking and on the same page moving forward.
I think you've articulated it very well, to have how to hold the two thoughts in your head at the same time, drink in the same pub, and be able to have some of these quite tough arguments and not fall out and not always agree, but discover the common ground, which could be way out there, nowhere near the middle.
I think we have to be very careful. I know when I ran for election 5 years ago, people said, you're mad. Don't run to the Greens. Everybody hates you in rural Ireland. You have to hope in hell. And I knocked on 1,000 doors, and 2 people gave me grief about being green. Most of the farmers asked me about the weather. Where were all the birds? How come there was no dead insects on their windscreens anymore? So I think we should dispel that myth about, farmers being one way and us being the other. And I also think we should dispel the myth about having to go to the pub to meet people, because we have a cafe culture now, actually. And we have a farmers market culture, and we have lots of other ways of meeting people. I had a friend who moved from England, and she raised pigs and grew vegetables. She never went to the pub, never went to mass, knew all her neighbours. So there's lots of ways of interacting with your neighbours outside of the pub and outside of... I think there's a lot of fear around calling to your neighbours. And actually I had the guard who is in charge of security for rural Ireland all over Munster, and I had a meeting with her, and she said the number one thing is people should call to their neighbours. 100%. And don't be afraid, knock on the door.
Okay.
And forget all this like us and them and all that. We saw how that works in America. It ain't working. It doesn't work here. It's not our culture.
I want to change direction suddenly. All the farmers that I know, who I'm working with, who I know personally, I open their fridge and I think, Jesus, what supermarket do they go to? Sinead, I want to ask you. People in deeply rural areas quite often are in a food desert. Access to food is quite hard. Is the government reaching out? Is it being progressive in how it engages on some of these food conversations, especially around those on lower incomes?
It's interesting that you go immediately to the government. If you're going to the farmer's house and you're looking in his fridge, are you asking him the question as well, or do you go straight to... So is your question around why in rural areas food is sometimes higher, more expensive, and why are people leaving? Right.
Yeah.
It's a specific case in Ireland. So, somewhat specific in Ireland. So globally, brace yourselves, everyone. Ireland is considered a leader in sustainable food systems.
Who agrees with that? Just hold that thought. Hands up for that statement.
I should say Sinead is a food consultant as well. She's an academic in this area. It's what she studied. But absolutely give your own opinion. Who agrees?
Yes. Ray, back up. Ray. Ray. That's putting Sinead on the spot. I'm not trying to put the spotlight on.
No. It's
exactly.
So I've opted out of academia, by the way, the last year. But I come with what I like to think of as rigorous research. So there's the evidence base and there's the anecdotal. But I am curious. Does anybody agree that Ireland has a sustainable food system?
Yeah, that was...
Okay, cool. Neither do I. But the evidence base suggests that we are. And that's relative to other countries. And there is no other way of comparing unless we're comparing to utopia, which is one way of going. Absolutely. So
what is utopia? Hang on.
Well, that's it. That's the problem. So what is utopia? Yeah. We don't know. So we need...
Okay. Okay, microphone. Does anyone want to add anything?
So, okay.
No, okay, there's a...
I will. All right, I will. But...
Is that a question? Sorry, I know, you're being interrupted.
Or I won't.
No, go.
Okay. Sustainable means it's environmentally, economically, and socially sustainable. All right?
In the capitalist model.
Well, it depends. No,
what time do you want to end this?
No, capital model is just economically viable.
No, wait. Okay, come on, hold, Matt. Sir, person in the green shirt, hold.
So within the existing systems that we're operating, within the existing countries that exist, not utopia, Ireland does extremely well on a lot of indicators. So they're measured, they're quantified, and yes, sustainability, what the hell is it? What does food security mean? What does food affordability mean? Within the academic spheres, everybody's arguing over that. The EU has been going insane the last few years trying to figure out how do we label food so that consumers have more agency. So nobody agrees 100% on this, but there are enough indicators to point to Ireland being at least a leader on some of those indicators. My point with that is, it's one of them. One of the areas where Ireland does well is participatory policy making. So we allegedly listen very well to our people. And we had this conversation yesterday in one of the panels they did. That's pretty dismal that that's the best going. So we can do better, but there's an opportunity there. And you're talking about going to your neighbours, and this is the anecdotal part. Ireland is in a really good position where everybody is linked, and there are good people here, and there are blow-ins, and they're bringing the best of what's there, and the Irish people are open to it. So I can't speak about housing, for example, but what I can speak about is I was speaking with James here today, who's phenomenal if anybody has a chance to speak to him. For example, there he is, hiding. If we're looking at housing, we have an opportunity to lead the way, to show people all around the world are looking to Ireland to say, how do we do this? They're looking to us. So we need to find the things that we're doing well, and we need to go further. So if we're talking about housing and retrofitting, can we also talk about building sustainability into that? Can we talk about removing refrigeration and using the crap Irish weather to store pantry food without needing refrigeration? Can we really push that boundary further? Are the Greens in a position to do that? Can you lead the way, really, do you think?
Okay. Yes, a question, please.
Well,
Okay.
I was here last year, and I just finished a master's in organic farming, and I was looking at collaboration and collective farming as a way to solve the food security issues in Ireland. So looking at ways to bring farmers together, that they could form markets, revenue streams, and it all comes down to land. It all comes down to access to land. It all comes down to how, like, I'm a grower, and I'm still looking for land 5 years later. I've met many growers in the last few years. I've been at Ray's probably sick of me talking about this because I was at feeding ourselves. The policy around land is the issue. And not only then, how do we build and live on land? Like, I don't know if anyone's into Talamh Bio or knows of Talamh Bio, but of Talamh Bio, the vast majority of them were not living in structures that had planning. I'm not naming names because I might get into trouble, but most of them were actually living in caravans, yurts, and they are the people actually growing food. Like, everyone talks about growing food and how amazing food is, but if you actually go out and grow food, it's extremely difficult. And if you can't actually live on the land that you're growing on, never mind actually getting access to it, where are we? Like, if Ireland had a policy of figuring out how to get those who want to grow land to actually do it, that would solve an awful lot of it. But that needs to come from the top down, because the policy, Ireland's agriculture policy, is on livestock. We are a livestock exporter.
It's not actually.
The
there's an entire Food Vision 2030. I can't see it anymore behind Rob. There's an entire strategy.
Oh, I know. Yeah, the Food Vision 2030. Yeah.
Right. It's not perfect, but it's not just agricultural production, and we were the first country in the world to do that.
So I'll just say just a few things on that to give you some hope. The derelict housing grant. Anybody who's got the grant is now growing food. Because you don't get a derelict house without some land with it. There is no derelict. You know, they're doing up houses in the middle of nowhere that have been abandoned for years. So that's one thing I'll say. The second thing is, just yesterday, through the planning law, we got into legislation that every local authority has to provide community gardens for people. Now, it's not the be-all and end-all, but it means community gardens have to be provided for in every county in Ireland. That's also a good thing. And then also, back to visiting your neighbours. If you make friends with your neighbours and they're not tilling the land anymore because they're tired and they associate with poverty, I suppose, and you have the whole, we've been colonised, we're obsessed with our land, John B. Keane play, the field, then you need to just do it organically from the grassroots up. We can't expect the state to sort everything. A lot of things happen through grassroots, making connections on your own, while we're trying to figure out all the shit from the top down.
Okay, yeah. And okay. So there's something, I hate to mention the UK, but there's something called biodiversity net gain. So all developers have to kind of, in order to build stuff, they've got to provide 10% more biodiversity somewhere else. I met with one of the head farmers at the Hay Festival the other day, and they said, well, no, why aren't we doing net farmland, net allotment, net gain at the same time? So this idea that you don't just provide more habitat for land, you also provide more habitat to grow food. But I sense that Ireland is more connected to growing their food than the UK.
Yeah, but look at the trends. There's less and less farmers all the time, and it's a great point that Fergal Anderson from Tallaght Bio makes. We need more and more farmers.
But then how do you get more farmers if they're not interested in tilling the land?
What I do see is organic farmers are doing really well. The conventional farmers are not doing so well. So maybe they need to look at that, because our organic farmers are increasing and our organic growers are increasing. I have friends who started off with a 2 acre who are now up to 60 acres beach lawn organics. And in fairness to Tallaght Bio, Fergal Anderson is doing well, Fergal Smith is doing well. You know, they're not making livelihoods. So I just think
so how many
we
people
obviously value quality food in Ireland. Some people do.
How many people buy organic food most of the time? Raise your hand. How many of you buy organic some of the time as a bit of a treat? Okay. Yeah, okay. Even if organic land potentially could take more wild land into farmland production to provide the food. But let's park that. So, sorry, yes.
Sure. So I promised you that I would intervene as well, Rob. So I'll have another question about property relationships. And more concretely, I was wondering, like, how would you respond to this question about the Irish countryside now being populated by the Irish peasantry, which has been dispossessed historically by imperial forces, and then after independence has gotten title to the land for very justified reasons. But I would say that the dispossessed nowadays, they are camping out by the Grand Canal. So how can those people get access to the land in Ireland in a countryside that is maybe depopulating to some extent, or is, as you mentioned, the farming families that are maybe where the young people are leaving the farms. So is there any way for those people to have access to land rather than bloody carbon offsetting speculators, which I think is the more likely scenario?
Okay.
There's, you speak to something very important there, because this trauma or this relationship with Irish people and the land is still very much a thing. We've owned our own land for in most cases, for less than 100 years. And that's a very short time. So intergenerational trauma that comes from not owning your own land and then all of a sudden owning it. When you own it, you're not going to give it away. And there are, I don't know about this county, I'm talking about Kerry, there are huge areas of County Kerry where the land is doing nothing. It's not rewilded, it's overgrown, and it's basically a desert.
Abandoned?
I don't know what the English for Finan is.
Heather?
Millennia.
Yeah,
white grass.
Like you have acres and acres of this that it's not conducive to biodiversity in any way. It's actually killing everything that grows underneath it. Maybe that's where we could start, actually pointing out to people, you own this land, yes, but it's not doing anything for anybody.
Someone made the point at the end of the conference, and it was quite a heartfelt point, that we've talked about everything in a human-centric way and not given a space to nature. Nature knows best. I agree at a deep level, but at a fundamental level, that problem with the Finan, that needs human intervention. That needs very light grazing of cattle to break it up at certain times of the year to allow tree seeds to come into it. So, like, same with invasive species. If we just walk, that's why I really believe it's critical to keep rural communities intact. If we walk away, it's Finan and invasive species. That's it. We're not going to get this ecological utopia that's often promised if we just leave the land, do what it knows best.
Just back to your question about the dispossessed, though. There's two things. There's a social farming project that runs all over Ireland in rural areas, and it's where they connect people who want to do farming on the land with farmers who are happy to let them work on the land, people with disabilities, people who are refugees. We had a few projects going in Minton Malbay before they all got moved somewhere else. And I see also in Inchy Kilmaley, where there was war over them moving in, that now they are gardening in people's houses and growing food in their houses, because we're at full employment and we need people who are willing to work the land. So there is some positives as well.
People from the Ukraine have been a critical part of Home Tree's success, like central. I couldn't overstate that.
But does that mean? Is that also squeezing people within Ireland who maybe want to come and work, or are you saying there's not enough because it's a bit like labour for agricultural hard work? It's very hard. People often don't want to do it, and it's people from outside who really want to graft at it, who are willing to step up.
I mean, I think it varies. Some locals don't want to grow, and some Blowens don't want to grow, and they want to pay for it. And I don't think it's a clear divide. I think if you don't have something, you might want it more than somebody who already has it anyway, because you might appreciate it more. But I do think, like, it's interesting for me to see what's happening around here with regards to accessing food, because who is actually growing food? There's a lad from Tubber who comes down and sells buds. Like, how many people go to the farmer's market here on a Saturday? Hands up. There you go. That says it all. No, it's a Saturday in Ennistimon. There's only 2 stalls. But you know what I mean? Let's put our money where our mouth is.
Hands up. Is it Friday or is it Saturday?
Sorry, it's a Saturday, but I'm just saying talk is cheap. Yeah. And as a country, we spend 9% of our income on food because we don't value food enough.
No, but hang on, that's not the people on lower income. That's more towards kind of 13%.
Okay, so we also have a huge food waste issue. 50% of all our food is being thrown away, and that's in every socio-economic sphere. So it's. I'm not saying it's not fair on the poor, but at least can the rich spend their money on local food? You know what I mean?
To be fair, Hugo's is pumping.
Yeah, but that's not local food. I'm talking about fruit and veg grown in the soil. Hugo's is great, of course.
Okay, we've got a question here.
Just to speak to the topic of access to land, I know, like, Self-Organised Architects Ireland did a whole piece around community living. So there's still actually not a model of community living established in Ireland. And their whole mission was to try and sort of establish and workshop through a lot of the roadblocks. But a lot of that also led into land development trusts and creating mechanisms that people could work with farmers who obviously were very emotionally connected with their land and didn't want to give up the land, obviously, with the trauma involved. And there's a big piece around trying to unravel and heal that trauma. But they're doing great work in trying to actually create legal mechanisms so that people can have these security of tenure on land from farmers that will not give up the land. They want to keep it in the family, but are happy to see people doing progressive farming projects.
That's what the social farming is doing. It's leasing land to people who want to grow food on farmers' land, who don't want to let go of it.
So can I go back to the guy at the back? I didn't catch your name, sorry, because I'm wondering. So Eldon has just mentioned there some of the legalities. Can you tell us? Are you with Talam Bio? Is it?
I just joined in there this year.
Okay, so you have an alternative food policy proposal, right?
Coming out in October, yeah.
And you guys are food sovereignty, and that's the grassroots side of the right to food, which comes from the top down. So do you engage with the right to food? Have you found a space within the Constitution where the right to food may also mean access to land in a collective way? Or what can you bring to help influence policy or legislation?
I think that's, to be honest, it's not me. I'm literally a blow-in to Talam Bio. It's Fergal and Tomás O'Connor. So I'm just kind of only in this last year. But
no,
read policy every single day.
No, she's just wondering what.
So I'd like to hear his experience, really, especially in light of what Eldon has just said. But also, I didn't ask him to read it every day. I don't even read policy every day. Who wants to do that? Although it is pretty interesting, in my opinion. But I do think there's an onus. We have rights as citizens, and we have a duty as well. We need to stay informed. And I'm not saying government makes it easy all the time, but we're in a pretty good country for that again still. Yeah. So we can and we should, I think, tap into that. Can I just say one thing, Rob, on this, and I'll stop talking then. So for the first time ever in the history of the state, we have a Minister for Biodiversity and Land Use. And her name is Pippa Hackett. She's a farmer from the Midlands. And I met her about a month after she became the senator, and she was nearly crying because she said all she'd been asked to meet
were hard right-wing lobbyists, the IFA and, the 10-10-20 lads, which is phosphates and nitrogen. And but sorry, so Rob, just to finish. Like, we've got to stand up and own our shit and get involved in this.
Okay.
Because I rang Talamh Bio, I rang IOFCA, I rang, Organic Trust. We're so busy being martyrs and activists, we forget that policy is important. And Pippa Hackett was dying to meet people with positive solutions.
Okay.
But I had to go and recruit them to go to her. Whereas the brass-necked bollockses who don't give a shit had no problem meeting her straight away.
Okay, that's great, because you also mentioned biodiversity. Look, I'm also aware of the time. We're feeling a bit hungry. I'm going to leave this now. We're feeling a bit hungry. But then, right to land, you're feeling hungry. Yes, I'm just reading the route. You're absolutely right. Right to land, biodiversity, Pippa Hackett. Okay, how many people in the room? Okay, let's do a little bit of role play. You've got your little small holding. You're very connected to land. Someone says, right, we're going to introduce some beavers in this area, maybe some white-tailed eagles. They've got a right to land. Their nature, their biodiversity. How do people feel about that? You're kind of thinking about your small holding. You're living off it. You've got some chickens. You've got a little stream running through it. How do people feel about reintroducing species back that were previously there beforehand? Any thoughts on that? I've just changed direction completely because someone said right to land and someone said biodiversity. A microphone here, yes, please.
Can I just reverse for 10 seconds?
Yes, no, do. Absolutely.
I come from rural Ireland, fishermen, farmers, right? And I come from the 10-10-20 brigade.
Yeah, me
If you ask my father, my grandfather, the biggest improvement to their lot as farmers in the past 50 years, it was 10-10-20. It made the land green, 100%. Right?
Because that's for the people who don't know in the room, 10-10-20 is a fertilizer, by the way.
Ratio.
Yeah. But the reason 10-10-20 was so important to them was because their mindset was, we need to grow as much food as possible
the Green
to
Revolution.
feed ourselves and to sell.
Yeah, export.
Yeah, and raise as many animals as we can. This bigger, better, more was their lot. Now, our generation have a sea change. So when we're growing potatoes, for example, we don't look at the 10-10-20. We look to what came before, which is the seaweed that is literally higher than us when we go down to the shore. A natural fertilizer that we can use and that helps us grow potatoes enough for us. So it's a sea change. It's you can't dismiss the 10-10-20 brigade because
it was weird.
Because it's their mindset, because they needed it to survive.
100%, because the land was so shit, they had to feed it. Yeah. But what you see now, because of the Ukrainian war, they couldn't get the 10-10-20 in or the nitrates in. And I met them all at the ploughing championship. Loads of farmers come up to me at the Green Party stall and they were saying, we couldn't afford it, we didn't do it. And we used our slurry better. We poisoned the water less, don't quote me on that. But we used our slurry better and we got the same yield. Because in fairness to 73, we joined the EU and the Department of Ag have told these lads to do that. And it's not growing food, it's only growing meat. And that's a huge issue as well, to be honest. And we can't go without saying that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's priorities changing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to say one thing, just because potatoes came up. It turns out we have an award winner of potatoes here, and I think that's why it
Okay, all right, this for probably the 10th time today. Long story short, right? We have, and this is a lesson for everybody. We have in West Kerry a thing called the Spud Off, right? This is very serious, right? Every parish has a competition for homegrown potatoes, right? And every parish crowns a winner, so it's very serious business. You grow your own potatoes, you bring it to the pub on a set evening. There is a panel. No, the pub. You have a panel of 3 judges and they taste every single potato in the parish, and they crown a winner. So, yes, I won it one year. Using seaweed as fertilizer, I might add.
Okay.
You know, on Sunday they're doing that here. On Sunday, if you want to check in what's happening locally, there's an agricultural show, and you go into the vocation school and you'll see the best head of cabbage, the best eggs, and the best spuds. Do not miss it.
I'm going to go to that show on Sunday, and I feel it's very hard, and I feel very bad for trying to get away from spuds and fertilizers to sea eagles and beavers, because suddenly the room has got restless, but there's a hand up. And I do want to let this lady talk about sea eagles and beavers or something related, possibly.
Okay, yes, so you were talking about reintroducing species. Well, the thing is that it's more important that we restore the habitats, because otherwise these species won't survive. And yeah.
Yeah. So it's habitat-led. A microphone over there, please. Thanks.
Hi, I'm also a member of Tallaght Bio, and I've been there for the last few years. I still feel as if I'm getting into the groove, but anyway, what I want to say is for anyone who doesn't know, they're a grassroots farmers organisation, and they're trying to get from the bottom up. And I also think that we need to go from the top down. So it's a combination of the two. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. A combination of the two, and I think maybe that's where we should kind of draw it up to a wrap. Top down, bottom up, spuds, eagles, habitat, fertilizer, community-led. Oh, no, microphone here, please. Yeah, go. Anyone else put your hand up? This is the last chance, open mic. Another hand up, oh my goodness.
This is highly controversial, I appreciate that.
Okay, we're going to have to moderate this, because otherwise we won't eat.
I'm not labelling everybody or everything, but if we don't consider the farm animals as part of nature, then we are not going to be able to have the heart capacity to actually mind our land and the wildlife properly. The farm animals are intrinsic. And if we have most of our land in Ireland that is useful agricultural land being used to produce farm animals or their feed, the millions in cramped cages, in shitty conditions, and they're the ones we are eating. 99% of the time, we are eating them. And that is so corrosive to our capacity to have empathy for anything else. If we have this massive cognitive disconnect between our love of nature, the abstract thing, and these massive, horrendous systems of farming that we are supporting by buying and by letting governments and agencies and all the rest fund it with our taxpayers' money, then we are going nowhere. We are going nowhere.
Okay, thank you. Valley. Another hand up for someone. Any more point? Thank you for that. I think we should be eating beavers as well, mind you.
Yeah, I'm based in Tipperary, and we have issues. Talking about working from the bottom up. Some friends of ours started Hedgerow Ireland in Tipperary because we have a couple of massive landowners who buy huge tracts of land. In fact, I think there's also a land observatory lobby that has started on the basis of a couple of big stud farms, we don't need to name them, who are buying enormous properties at huge prices. So they're completely putting small farmers out of business. And I think, so that's the big issue, is the fact that it seems in Ireland there's very little constitutional rights to farm the land if you're a small owner or a single farmer. And then the thing of, we have tried to lobby to get, there is a special directive to you can cut hedgerows unashamedly for, I think it's up to 100 meters, and we're trying to get that get rid of, and we have lobbied for the last 3 years the department, and unsuccessfully. So this is something that's really important in terms of trying to get habitat back.
Trying to get habitat back. And also I was just hearing in the talk about woodlands of Donegal, all the great tranches of woodland are under private ownership. That's why they've survived. So there's benign and there's negative, big land ownership for different reasons. It's how it's wielded. Is it a tool? Is it a weapon? How to integrate it. Right. I think we're going to wrap it up. Yeah, look, Ray's just done that. Was that a hand? No, okay. So, guys, panelists, all of you, thank you very much indeed for that fascinating session. So let's eat and drink and make merry.